Hello, I'm Gary Stone. I am a member of First Presbyterian Church, and welcome to the April 9th Lenten service. I am presently training to be a Stephen minister. I am also going to be a new deacon, although I was a deacon when I began serving at First Presbyterian Church in the 1970s. That's when my wife and I joined the church with our children. My sons are now officers in their churches at First Presbyterian Church of State College and First Presbyterian Church of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I've been assigned the following question for discussion. When have you felt righteous anger, and what did you do about that anger? Well, I would define righteous anger as a strong anger that one connects with witnessing injustice and wrongdoings. Often these wrongdoings are connected with both physical and emotional harm to others. In my 82 years of life, I have witnessed a lot of harm done to others, and particularly since for 55 years of those 82, I was a social worker, working with all kinds of people in all kinds of situations. I'd like to talk about one of the earliest experiences I had as a social worker, because it does explain my righteous anger and that of a whole large group of people. I had planned to be employed the summer of 1963, between my junior and senior years of college, at a program called The Lighthouse, which operated out of the Kensington area of Philadelphia. They took in children who they identified as pre-delinquent, and the school districts and others would identify children who potentially were going to get into trouble. They had a camp out at Pine Grove, Pennsylvania, and I was assigned as a camp counselor along with two other students who were female, also in their junior years of college, having completed those junior years. We prepared the camp together along with two graduate students from England and a man who was here to observe what was the services of the lighthouse, and he came from Trinidad. He was of African descent. After we prepared the camp for the new kids to arrive the following day, we decided we needed a break. We had already done a lot of studying, a lot of preparation, but we felt one of the ways we could do this would be to go see the Jordan brothers at Willow Lake in near Schuylkill Haven, Pennsylvania. The Jordan brothers were already famous. They had already made recordings. And we wanted to show our friends from England and our friend from Trinidad what good old rock and roll was, especially rock and roll from the coal regions. So we piled into cars, went off to this venue, and started paying our fee to get into the venue. It would cost 75 cents, but that's neither here nor there. What occurred then was that we were greeted by a bouncer who said, "We don't take people like you in here." And I think he was, it was pretty clear he was directing most of his attention to the man from Trinidad. Well, the graduate student from England, one of the male graduate students, started to shout back at the man and say, "No, wait a minute, he's from another country, he was here to observe, he's friends, don't worry," and that meant nothing to this bouncer, because he began coming much closer to us and saying, "I mean, get out now." So at that point, we were really astounded, angry, frightened. Two of the girls began to cry and held on to the man from Trinidad, whose name was Jesse. And finally, Jesse escorted them out of the building, comforting them, and while they were trying to comfort him. And the man from England was restrained by one of our supervisors, and he too was escorted from the building, and we all left. When we got back to camp, we tried to process what could we do about this affair, and finally decided we would write a letter to the local newspaper in Pottsville called the Pottsville Republican Herald. It was a rather lengthy letter, and it took quite a long time to write it, and part of that writing process, I understood later, was part of the therapy that we were getting from the supervisor, how to manage anger and how to direct it in a more proper fashion. Certainly a better fashion than going after the bouncer. Well, it really illustrated to us, what you need to do, and I've subsequently found a book that by John Lewis that was written in 2012, and Lewis says there are several things you need to do if you're going to not be violent, but at the same time carry out the work as it's needed. The first thing one needs to do is one needs to have faith. Without faith and without knowing what Jesus would do in these situations, we probably shouldn't make any movement. But if we come to the conclusion that we need to do something because someone is being harmed, then the next step is to really study the situation and make it clear what we need to do. Third thing we need to do is we need to have hope along with our faith in order to carry it out. I think he says the third thing is we need to start to act and really begin to do what we had planned to do. Then we should do, once we have achieved our goals, even if we haven't, we need to bring peace to the situation, because we need to reconcile with the persons who we are accusing of the act. So, and the final line is we need to love them. So I think John Lewis and Martin Luther King had read the Bible pretty clearly and ascertained what they needed to do. 1963, by the way, was the time that Martin Luther King was in the Birmingham jail. He had gone in there in April, and he wrote a letter to some clergymen who criticized his activities, basically on the basis of, Martin, it's too soon to do anything. You need to restrain yourself. And Martin Luther King had a very strong temper, according to John Lewis, but he wrote back to the clergymen saying we needed to act, and in some ways the church has been more obstructive of the civil rights movement than has the Ku Klux Klan. That's a pretty strong statement to make, but I think, it's clear to me that doing nothing when you see other people being hurt, seriously hurt, or restrained in a way that's unjust, is subject to criticism. Something I need to say now is that the letter really never got published, but we had no response to it. Now, what's the hope for the future generation? Well, while I was doing this presentation, or preparing for this presentation, I got a fax. Well, not a fax, it's called a, whatever you get over the telephone. I know, you'll tell me. And it was a picture of my grandchildren at First Presbyterian Church of State College, holding signs saying, "Honk if you love tangengers." I'm thinking, they were doing what they needed to do to show that they were supportive of transgender people in their lives. And I'm proud of them. Well, so for them and for others who are active, and for ourselves, let us say a prayer. Heavenly Father, you are Father of all the world, all the people. When there are problems, help us and we need to help others. Let us stand with Jesus, who is already standing with those people. Let us stand with Jesus as we unite with those people to help them. And let us be kind to the perpetrators of this injustice as well. We need to find ways to reconcile and find peace for all people. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, and good day.